talk to lawyers and they're frustrated because like I see this guy on TV everywhere. I'm such a better lawyer than he is. He hits all the cases. And it's like, because there's no correlation with being good at your thing and getting paid. There's a direct correlation though with being good at marketing your thing and getting paid for it. So the question is, if you're already a great lawyer, how do you make yourself well known? Because if you can combine those two things, then you're going to take off.
And I've noticed this habit where when I have things that continually show up on my to-do list every single week that I don't take action on, start a podcast, do first episode of podcast. That's what was actually starting to happen with me, is I would like one in every 2 weeks when I'd enter the week with a list of priorities, podcast would be there. And I've just learned that after a certain period of time, if your gut is telling you to do something and you're not doing it, just do it. Welcome to another episode of the Law Firm Growth Acceleration Podcast. Today, I have the one and only Andy Stickel in the flesh, the real one, the only one. Today, Andy, how you doing, man?
Not the AI, Andy Stickel.
Not the AI.
All right, so I want to say something here. So this is funny. So like this is the Law Firm Growth Acceleration Podcast, and it's based off of the Law Firm Growth Acceleration model, which we invented. It's based off of the book that we wrote together called Law Firm Growth Accelerator. And how many episodes? What episode? This is like the 6th or 7th episode or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And this is actually the first one that I've been on, right? So I just want to show something really funny here, that basically the way that our company has functioned and grown for how long has it been? I mean, well, since we've, merged and gotten together 2 years, is basically one person has an idea and just runs with it and just starts implementing even before the other half of the person is even, or the other half is even like ready. So basically, Bill texted me one day. He's like, "Hey, we're starting a podcast. And we're called the Law Firm Growth Acceleration Podcast, and we did like 7 episodes already." And I was like, "Okay, I guess." And this is a podcast that we're doing together, but like episode 7 is the first one that I'm actually on. And I want to take this as a learning opportunity for everyone, where just get started. I think that's like one of the biggest reasons that this company SMB team has been so successful, is that I don't know if it's ignorance, or I don't know if it's impatience or ADHD or whatever it is, but we don't have the patience to wait around for everyone to sign off on an idea. We just kind of get started, and sometimes things crash and burn, but a lot of times things actually somehow work out. And I think that that's a lesson that a lot of people can learn, is just the fact that just action produces results, and most of the time people just don't do anything because they think about it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, the concept of starting a podcast, I think, is an important concept for every law firm owner to consider as a brand building or client acquisition strategy. Not necessarily to directly sign up clients. Like if you're a PI lawyer or a criminal defense lawyer, you don't want to make a podcast called "What to Do When You've Been Hit by a Semi-Truck" podcast. Or "What to Do When You've Been Arrested for Domestic Violence" podcast.
It'd be a weird podcast. Like if your wife looks at your podcast and you're reading, you're listening to the domestic violence podcast.
What to do after something? You've been arrested for domestic violence podcast. Oh, by the way, well, this is ADD kicking in. I'm going to explain. This is called a hook. An open loop. I'm going to explain in just a moment what happened to my hand, and it's not what you think.
I'll give you a clue. It has to do with the domestic violence podcast.
Oh, man, that's good. But I think that podcasting is a strategy that every law firm owner should consider. It's something that Andy and I talked about doing for like, I don't know, a year and a half. And quite frankly, we didn't really have a need to do it because we have so many other things going on with our events, our company, everything. And we had talked about it. We thought about it. We wanted to name it around the concept of our book, but we just never really got around to doing it. And I've noticed this habit where when I have things that continually show up on my to-do list every single week that I don't take action on, like start a podcast, do first episode of podcast. That's what was actually starting to happen with me, is I would like one in every 2 weeks when I'd enter the week with a list of priorities, podcast would be there. And I've just learned that after a certain period of time, if your gut is telling you to do something and you're not doing it, just do it. Like, just find a way to short circuit the whole process. And that's why I wanted to just get started. So like literally we were in the office, BC and I, who's behind the camera right now because he's shy. After he did his first episode with us, he ended up realizing how shy he really was. And he broke down afterwards, very, very shy. Now he's going to come on camera in the middle of this, right? No, he's not. Why don't you come on camera right now? Come on. Yeah, just show everyone. All right. Now just notice, look at this. All right.
Am I on camera?
I think he was destined for show business, but that's just me.
I think you guys are better on camera. I'm better behind.
Okay. Go ahead. You're going to say
Well,
something.
you know, so the funny part is that, you know, talking about actually doing things, there's statistics that you've probably, I don't know if you've heard me talk about this before, but like the rule of 21. So, well, first of all, there's 2 million podcasts on the Apple podcast store, right?
Yep.
500,000 of them have one single episode. So 25% of people that say they're going to start a podcast only did one episode and then just abandoned it, right?
Okay.
And then there's this rule of 21 where if you think about it, so whenever somebody says they're going to do anything, and this actually I think came from podcasting, but this applies to podcasting, it applies to videos, it applies to blog posts, it applies to anything, where if you have people that say they're going to do something, only 10% of people will ever actually make it to the third variation of the thing. So that means that if you have a room of 100 people, and say 100 law firm owners, for example, that say they're going to start a podcast, only 10 of them will make it to episode 3, right? And then of the 10% that make it to episode 3, only 10% of them, so one person, will make it to episode 21. So it's like,
wow.
Most of this game is just don't quit. That's like the hardest thing to like to tell people, or the hardest people to get through to people is that you don't have to be that good. You just have to be consistent. Like, I'm not that great at any of this stuff. I've just done so much stuff, and I always look at things in the rule of 21. So I know that if I say I'm going to do a podcast, or if I'm going to do film videos, or I'm going to do TikTok videos, if I do 21, I'm already in the top 1%. And then if I do another 21, I'm in the top 1% of the top 1%. And then if I do another 21, I'm in the top 1% of the top 1% of the top 1%. And like, you know, you just have to understand human nature. Human nature is people don't finish what they start. So just by continuing to go, and it's going to work. Yeah. You know, and it's really interesting.
And so I just want to break down some of the reasons that that we started this from kind of Andy's opening point, and how you can kind of use these principles for your law firm as well. So I think one of the most important things when it comes to content creation is finding the style that works best for you. And Andy is really good at creating what we call direct-to-camera videos. Like, he's good at preparing for a YouTube video, for example, and fitting his content into a tangible format that works well for a platform like YouTube. And for me, it's actually been really hard to stay consistent with that. The first version of this podcast was really the talk show that I did for 3 years, where I interviewed people. And the fact that it was more conversational, less scripted, and like really long form, like every talk show I did was an hour long. It just was a style that worked for me, which is why I did it for 3 years straight. And when I stopped that talk show, it's just become harder and harder and harder for me personally to make content. But yet Andy has remained very consistent with making content, and I haven't, right? So part of the reason for this podcast for me personally is embracing my style of conversational extra long form content, which, you know, I did for 3 years. So I think like one of the first considerations for you in your law firm's content creation strategy is finding the method that works best for you. Because the bottom line is you gotta film something. Like to Andy's point, you gotta show up, and then you gotta just stay consistent with whatever you're gonna do. If you're better like Andy is, now I think Andy's good at podcast format as well. I just happen to not be as good at what Andy's good at, which is like the the tighter videos that are on, YouTube, for example. I think embracing your content style is so vital to staying consistent, because if you do something for too long that is like pulling teeth for you to do, you're going to eventually give up on it. And for me, like, I like showing up to sessions like, podcasts like this with no plan, nothing prepared at all, because I actually think it pulls out more authentic content from myself. And it's something that with what we do with our events, what we do with our boot camps, we're always kind of like performing, because like Andy and I have 3 45-minute speaking slots, or like 30-minute speaking slots at each day of our like events that we do.
Yeah.
And it's like we have to fit so much content into this little snippet, right? That it made me feel like people who have encountered S&B Team's brand, especially for me, maybe not as much for Andy, they're not able to actually see my pure unfiltered thoughts, and because it's always fit into a 30-minute public speaking, performance that like forces perfect execution of every time slot of the speech. And I feel like that people get enough of that, they get enough scripted stuff, and we want to create more unscripted stuff. And the last point I want to make is like, you definitely don't want to make a podcast. Like the point I was originally making, and I'd love to hear Andy's thoughts on this. Like, you don't want to make a podcast directly about your practice area, right? You don't want to make a podcast that is like only speaking to your target clients. You want to also get the attention of your local market on a more mass scale. So like if I was a PI lawyer or a criminal defense lawyer, I would just want to get the attention of everyone in my local market. I wouldn't want to restrict it to just people who are likely to be arrested. I would just want to talk about stuff that interests me as the podcast host, so that I can stay consistent with it and make it appealing to people in my local market, so that I can just build top of mind awareness. Because a podcast, I think it's very rare that a podcast goes viral like Joe Rogan and actually pulls in new blood by shaking someone and go, "Oh my God, did you hear about blah podcast?" It happens, but it's more rare. It's more likely that people encounter podcasts after having seen you somewhere else. So like, I saw your ad, I went to your website, I heard about you through a referral, and then I check out the law firm or the brand, and I find out they have a podcast. And after discovering this brand, right, then I discover the podcast. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how a podcast can actually acquire clients without directly trying to acquire clients.
So, okay, especially personal injury. Personal injury is probably, because they're like, personal injury is really like emergency services. It's somebody gets into an accident and they call 911 and then they call a lawyer, right? And same thing with criminal defense. So I think that it all comes down to, knowing who your avatar is and trying to figure out what people are actually interested in before they hire you. So like, for example, we've had, and this isn't just limited to podcasts. This is anything. It could be TikTok videos. It could be Facebook groups. It could be literally anything. So one that really comes to mind is a motorcycle accident attorney, where he's a criminal defense attorney. This is a guy that we worked with in Georgia, and he wanted to get motorcycle accident cases. So he started creating videos about what to do after you're in a motorcycle accident and all these types of videos. But the problem is, nobody that hasn't been in a motorcycle accident wants to watch a video about what to do after you've been in a motorcycle accident, because you haven't been in one, right? So what do people that So what you want to do is you want to position yourself so that people that ride motorcycles, who are the ones that will eventually get into motorcycle accidents, and like, I'm not trying to, I'm not hoping that anyone gets injured, but it's just statistically, people that ride motorcycles a percentage of them are going to get into motorcycle accidents. So I was talking to him, and I was like, well, why don't we create content that they care about now so that they see the content, they watch the content, they know, like, and trust you, and then should they actually get into an accident, then they're going to have the attorney, then they're going to know which attorney to talk to. So he started creating content like, which helmets are the best ones, and what are the most common causes of motorcycle accidents, and how do you prevent them? How do you prevent, I guess the number one cause of death on a motorcycle accident, other than drinking and riding, is left-hand turns. So he creates content that shows, okay, here's how you make left-hand turns safely and things like that. And what happens is now all motorcycle riders are interested in watching the content because it all actually applies to them. And one of the coolest things you can do is you can tell stories that are related to cases that you had. So, for example, you can say, I'm a motorcycle accident attorney, and I see this one type of accident happen all the time. So I'm going to give you 3 ways that you can prevent the most common motorcycle accident, cause of motorcycle accidents out there, right? And create content like that. And he was doing that and signing up clients left and right. And then there's another one that comes to mind that it was a personal injury attorney trying to get car accident cases. So they created content for parents of teen drivers. Specifically because parents of teen drivers they're very interested in keeping their kids safe every time they get behind the wheel, right?
Such a good
niche. So you create content that gets in front of them and says, listen, I see as a car accident attorney, I see accidents all the time. Here are 3 ways to avoid your teen from being distracted behind the wheel, right? Yeah. And they're going to watch that because they want to see how do they make sure their kids aren't distracted. And you can show like apps and all this different stuff. But now they're watching your content, they're interested in your content, and it's hopefully because they don't ever need an attorney. Now, what ends up happening is somebody that they know, and it's usually not the kid, it's a family member or a friend or something like that, or the parent themselves, will get into an accident, and now there's already a motorcycle accident, or there's already a car accident attorney who they know, like, and trust, who they've been watching all the videos and stuff. And like stuff like that is really where I think a lot of attorneys have a lot of opportunity and they don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Where it's like pick a niche. Like there's a lot of attorneys that they're just Second Amendment people. They just talk about Second Amendment rights and everything. And you're going to alienate half your crowd, but the other half, if you're talking about Second Amendments and you're pro-gun rights and all that type of stuff, you're going to bring them very close to you so that when something does eventually happen, even if it's not related to a gun, even if it's a DUI or assault and battery or whatever it is, now you're the criminal defense attorney that they've been watching all your videos and they trust.
Yeah.
So it's like, think about what is the wide market need as it relates to your practice area, and how can you start going after those people? And if you do that, it makes a big difference. I've seen it work a lot of times.
Yeah, and I think what you just hit, I think you call it what's it called, a DM, or your designated defined demographic
profile.
DDP. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you know your defined demographic profile, that's what it is.
Yeah.
DDP, then you make content that is relevant to your DDP.
Yeah.
So should
we explain what the DDP is?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, what you have to ask yourself, it's basically a statement that talks about who is your person that you're serving, and what do you help them get, and what are they afraid of. So it basically, if you were to have it as a formula, it's I help audience get thing they want without thing they want to avoid, right? So, for example,
motorcycle riders.
Yeah, I help bikers. Well, and it's interesting because you can, there's not one answer for a lot of these things. So motorcycle riders, and then think like, okay, what are all the things that they actually want? Now there's the before the accident, and then there's the after the accident,
Yep.
right? So if we're talking, let's say parents with teen drivers, right? So I help parents of teen drivers. That's the audience. And then the thing they want is learn. I help parents of teen drivers learn how to keep their kids safe behind the wheel, and then without having teenagers that have eye rolls and awkward conversations and mad teens at me, right?
Yeah.
Or without violating their privacy and stuff like that, right? But then you can take it further also. So like the best one that I ever heard was a family law attorney in Long Island, and he decided that he was going to work with first responders, so firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, police officers, things like that. And so he was a family law attorney. So what he helped them do, so it's I help first responders, And the thing that they want the most, which is really interesting, Ed, is they all want to protect their pension. Right. So first responders, they're like, yeah, I want the kids, I want the house, but I really want my pension. I don't want my ex-spouse to get my pension. So I help them get a divorce without losing their pension or without, things like that. So that's really, and you can also have multiple things they want and multiple things they want to avoid. And the reason that's important is because once you identify these things, then you can create all of your marketing content around that. So it's not necessarily like website copy, or like you're not going to put it as a headlight on your website. But if you have this and you understand this and you do this exercise, then you'll be able to see what people actually want and what they're afraid of, and then you can use that in all of your marketing.
So if we apply this DDP concept to creating a podcast, so a lot of the DDP stuff that you've taught has revolved around making content in a more structured format, right? So 8 ways to prevent blah, blah, blah on a motorcycle, like or eight of the best helmets to, use for da-da-da. So in a podcast format, if we take the DDP principle and apply it to a more unstructured format, my thought is, let's say motorcycle riders was your target audience, right? You would just want to create a podcast that gets the attention of motorcycle riders rather than make it all about, crash prevention, because that's not that sexy. It's not like, oh yeah. So it's not like, I can't wait to tune into the safety, podcast for motorcycle riders. So it's more like, I think in an unstructured content format, it's more about what are bikers binging on? Like,
that's why it's important.
And then you can have a Joe Rogan style kind of podcast where you're just talking about like hot topics that your target demographic would binge on. And then, I just so happen to be an attorney. And then you're kind of, by the way, off the cuff statements. By the way, I've had 1,000 cases like this and I've seen da-da-da. But that's not the focus of the podcast.
No.
That's more of like you give these little gems showing that you're an expert while capturing the audience attention of your DDP.
Yeah, well, and you have that, the DDP checks back to that. Because like I said, there's multiple things that people want. Like if you're a motorcycle rider, for example, there's a lot of things that you're going to be interested in. You're going to be interested in new models. You're going to be interested in new traffic laws. You're going to be interested in safety. You're going to be interested in gear. You're going to be interested in all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
So basically, it's like you just want to make sure that you have all this stuff in kind of your arsenal, and then you can talk about a lot of different things there. Yep. That's how I would do it.
Yeah.
It's like lawyer. I mean, for example, for the podcast, we're talking about law firms, and we know that at the core, lawyers that we work with, they want more free time, they want to make more profit, and they want to make sure that they're getting amazing results for their clients, right? But underneath that umbrella, there's a billion things we could talk about.
Yeah.
But we know that everything checks back to those 3 things that they want.
So like let's just throw out some ideas. I think you're exceptionally good at this. So like if you want to target motorcycle riders, just make a podcast that is about topics that motorcycle riders would be interested in and make it sexy so that you can build an audience in your local market, blah, blah, blah. Criminal defense. I actually think one of the best viral topic things is kind of like what we see Dave Bruno, one of our clients, do, where he just comments on big criminal defense cases that have made public national news. And it's become kind of like
you just read indictments.
It's like a crime
like
podcast.
the Diddy indictment. I saw so many lawyers that were just sitting there going through the indictment, be like, oh man, that's not good. It says right here that this is this, and that's going to be a whole problem for him. And like those videos have like hundreds of thousands of views.
Yeah, because it's like it's binge-worthy content, but within like. Yeah, I like that because in criminal defense, you don't have a anybody. You have white-collar criminal defense, and then you have people.
You know my favorite thing a criminal defense attorney's ever done? There's this guy, I can't remember his name, but basically he's a YouTube channel. He's like this old guy. He's probably in his maybe he's in like late 50s, early 60s. And he basically just reads rap lyrics and just talks about all the crimes that they're confessing to. He's like, oh no, I wouldn't say that. That's 5 to 10 right there.
That's
it's
so
hilarious.
funny.
Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name. but it's on YouTube. But yeah, but basically he'll like take a Lil Wayne song or whatever, and he'll just read the lyrics, and he's like, "Oh no, as his attorney, I definitely wouldn't say that."
Like, imagine being a criminal defense attorney. You spend 15 minutes of your beginning of your podcast commenting on recent crimes that went viral. You spend 5 minutes doing your daily rap song or your weekly rap song breakdown, crime breakdown. Then you go 15 minutes into unstructured blah, 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 right? And then it's just, by the way, I'm a criminal defense attorney and da-da-da-da-da. But you're not talking about how to prevent getting arrested. You're talking about sexy topics that kind of brand you.
You're just showing your expertise, right? Yeah, because
but it's sexy enough to capture the audience of the white collar crowd who may be interested in those topics, all the way down to the blue collar.
Well, you got to remember, if you're boring, you're broke. So you have to make it somewhat entertaining, right? Which is good. The bar is very low for that because most attorneys are not going to be very entertaining, right? So like even there's some people that do some very interesting things. A great thing to do also is if you can find a cause to get behind. So the Wasserman law firm out of California, right? So they're the Pot Brothers attorney at law, right? So and they're kind of a pattern interrupt also. I interviewed one of the guys, I can't remember his name. He's the first attorney I ever interviewed while he's doing a bong rip. No, it was a bong. It wasn't even So like I'm interviewing while he's smoking a bong. And basically, their whole platform is they're pushing for legalization of marijuana, right? So anybody that's really into that sort of thing is going to be very interested in listening to this podcast. And there was a guy in Louisiana who's a personal injury attorney, and there was this law in Louisiana. I don't know if it's still a law or not, but basically if you kill somebody on a motorcycle, so if you're driving, you cause an accident, it's your fault, motorcyclist gets killed, the fine was like $200 or something like it was like an insulting low fine for killing somebody, especially on a motorcycle. So he got this entire movement started where every time somebody was killed on a motorcycle basically he rallied all these bikers together to start writing letters and sending letters every single time somebody died to the state legislature. So anytime somebody, so first of all, here's what he did. He created an us versus them, right? All the motorcycle riders against, basically the people that are essentially saying that motorcycle lives don't matter because of the fact that it's only a $200 fine. But what happened was he created this entire movement. It was around something that everybody was pretty passionate about. And then anytime there was a motorcycle death, who do you think got the call? And it was just inadvertent, but he got so many motorcycle wrongful death cases just from doing that. Yeah. And that actually started with him. He took one of my courses and he started creating videos about the topic of motorcycle safety and not about what to do after a motorcycle, but he actually started talking about this law, created a Facebook group, and he gets tons of motorcycle cases just because of the fact that he brought awareness around this one thing and he kind of rallied around this one cause.
Yeah. And I look at like immigration is another area that is really powerful. I mean, we look at a lot of our clients in immigration, and I think it's the easiest niche of law to get tons of views
by far.
Quickly when you don't have a following.
Yeah.
Because like it is a hot topic. There's so much legislative change and new laws that are introduced, and based on different administrations, like Trump is going to be sworn in. That's going to cause an uproar potentially in the immigration community, which is a huge content opportunity for people in immigration, right? So there's like the news commenting side that immigration lawyers can focus on, where that could be a focal point of if they were to do a podcast, right, where they comment on recent immigration news. And then the other side is like immigrant success stories. Like your DDP, when you're an immigration lawyer, is going to be a niche of immigrants. Yeah. Right? So what if you were to interview successful immigrant stories as an aspirational piece of your podcast to show what life can be like in America when you do get a green card?
Showcase people that successfully came here, started businesses, and exactly. That'd be a really good topic.
And what if they ended up also being your clients?
Yeah,
then that's social proof as well, right? Yeah. So like you have immigration, you have criminal defense, personal injury. I think is probably one of the toughest ones because it's an event-based thing, and that's why like what I've come to, and I'd love to hear your thought on this. What I've come to conclusion on for PI in terms of branding and podcasting as a best strategy is I think you just got to talk about local news. I
Mm-hmm.
think you got to, like, okay, what are some of the most popular things in a local market? Let's say that you're
About bad drivers. Honestly, like there's this funny
that's a
joke.
good
It's like,
idea.
what's the difference between an idiot and an asshole?
Yeah.
An idiot is driving slower than you, and an asshole is driving faster.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
everybody's a perfect driver, right?
Yeah,
So if
yeah.
you do like crazy drivers in Orlando or crazy accidents in Orlando,
Yeah.
something like that, you know.
that, and like, what are the most, my question I'm asking is, what are the most popular topics in a local market? The first thing that comes to mind for me, like, I'm from Philadelphia, is sports. Like, I was in the airport coming down to Florida, where we're at right now, for our client event. We have about 200 of our clients flying in right now. And in the airport, literally everyone in Philadelphia on their phone was watching the Eagles game. Everyone. Like, there was probably like 3 people that weren't watching the Eagles game on their phone. Like, that is a topic that gets the attention of your local market at scale. So if you're a PI lawyer and you love sports, maybe you should just talk about sports every week and be a really good commentator on what's happening with your team, what's happening next week, what's happened thus far in the season.
Yeah.
And then, oh, by the way, I'm a personal injury attorney. This is just my passion. This is
Well,
just what I love.
look at my friend Dylan White. So he has dad chats on TikTok, and he's got on TikTok, I think he's got over 1 million followers. On Instagram, he's got over 1 million followers. He's a lawyer, but all he talks about is funny stories that happen with his kids. He doesn't talk about, I mean, I guess every once in a while he does, but the majority of what he talks about is funny stuff that happens with his kids. And he gets like hundreds of leads a week. Like not just a handful of leads, hundreds of leads every single week. And he's not even talking about the law.
What's his practice area?
I believe he does family law, and I don't even really know exactly what he does, but he gets leads everywhere. That's why he wants to partner with us to start distributing these leads, because he has so many of them. We'll have to talk about that off camera.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting is that I heard this concept recently, and I've got an entire presentation about this at our client workshop this week. But you get paid more for who you are rather than what you do, right? So think about this for a second. Let's say Kim Kardashian, she's going to be a lawyer, right? Or she's in law school. I guess she's in like year 7 right now. But let's pretend that she graduates law school and she opens up a personal injury firm in, I don't know, wherever it is, right? Do you think that she will get more clients than the average personal injury attorney in that city just because she's Kim Kardashian?
Yeah.
Do you think that she would probably have one of the biggest firms in that city simply because she's Kim Kardashian? Now, in terms of talent, where do you think she is? Probably near the bottom, right?
Well, all she needs is a badass legal recruiter to recruit the best attorneys in her market, and she just becomes
Right,
a lead
exactly.
generator.
But the thing is that you get paid more for who you are rather than what you do, right?
Yeah.
And not only that, but the more that you're paid for who you are, the more you're paid.
Yeah.
Right? So like it's so interesting because it's like so basically that's why a lot of times people are I talk to lawyers and they're frustrated because like I see this guy on TV everywhere. I'm such a better lawyer than he is. He gets all the cases. And it's like, 'cause there's no correlation with being good at your thing and getting paid. There's a direct correlation though with being good at your thing, good at marketing your thing and being paid and getting paid for it.
Yeah.
So the question is, if you're already a great lawyer, how do you make yourself well known? Because if you can combine those two things, then you're going to take off.
Yeah.
And the easiest way to do that is just start creating content,
Yeah.
start building an audience, and just start putting yourself out there. And again, if you look at the statistics, the rule of 21, it's not that hard. It's just a matter of consistently
Sticking
doing
through.
it. That's the hardest part, is just having the willpower to continue doing it.
And
you
like
know?
one of the last things I'd say about podcasting that I think is powerful is if you are kind of an unstructured long form content type like I am, it's really good for repurposing, right? Because you can get so many sound bites out, create, YouTube shorts, Instagram reels, and you basically get this constant source of content that you don't have to prepare for. All you have to do is stick through with doing a weekly scheduled snippet and just letting things roll off the top of your head without preparing, and then just repurpose that content. I think if you're not making content, if you look at, for example, a lot of people have seen Andy's videos on YouTube, and you look at his videos and you go, man, I could never do a video like that. Maybe doing videos like that isn't what you should immediately do. Maybe what you should do is try a more unstructured format like this, where you can just get yourself to start talking so that you can record something and repurpose that, right? So yeah, we just wanted to do a quick episode today on, why, podcasting or content creation, using podcasting as a method for content creation can be helpful for your law firm. A little bit about why we decided to start this podcast, how we started it. So we'll see you in the next episode. Keep it snazzy. Oh, wait. I forgot to tell you what happened to my hand. I promised. That was the open loop.
Bar fight.
Yeah, I punched a... all right, never mind. I didn't punch anyone. It was a cycling accident. I hit a guardrail going like 30 miles an hour. The end. And I got surgery, and I have pins in my hand. Yeah, it's pretty bad. The end. See you in the next one.